So this is a policy matters discussion, but it's not really going to be about any specific policy. It's going to be more about policy makers. This is going to be about Detroit city corruption. So over the summer, several Detroit city councilmen were raided by the FBI. Three: Andre Spivey, I actually live in his district, Janae Ayers, and Scott Benson. These three had their homes and offices raided by the FBI. Andre Spivey, they ended up finding some dirt on him. They haven't found anything on Janae Ayers or Scott Benson yet. Keyword, yet. So this is just the latest in all sorts of corruption out of the city of Detroit. We can go back pretty far. You can go back pretty far when it comes to the corruption in the city of Detroit. And there's a Detroit Free Press article that I think I'll put in the description that will probably give you a good history lesson on how screwed up the city has been. So if you want to ask the question, why is Detroit such a hole? And I'm pretty sure you could do the same thing for Baltimore, probably Philadelphia, probably some other cities as well, where the politicians overrule the policy. In other words, sometimes their rhetoric is stronger than the outcomes. People don't care about the outcomes, they just care about the rhetoric. So in this episode, we're going to talk about some of the more contemptible people that have been in Detroit city politics. I'm going to save everybody the trouble of going through all of the Kwame Kilpatrick stuff. He's going to definitely be here, and definitely is something worth talking about. But we're not going to spend a lot of time on Kwame Kilpatrick. He is the biggest embarrassment and probably in city history. You know, I think Kwame Kilpatrick is probably 1B to the bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is 1A. It's the most major American city that has gone bankrupt. I think next to New York City. I think New York City went bankrupt at one point in the 70s. But Detroit going bankrupt, absolute embarrassment. Kwame Kilpatrick would probably be number 2. Having a mayor that was someone that individuals claimed was going to be president one day. They thought he was going to be the first black president. Believe it or not, when I was a kid, I kept hearing that. Kwame Kilpatrick was only 31 years old when he was elected to mayor of Detroit. This was in 2001, which means I would have been about 17. He was elected. His mother, it was Carolyn Cheeks Kilpatrick, who was a congresswoman out of Detroit. So he had this running through his veins. So in 2013, Kwame Kilpatrick was sentenced to 28 years in prison. And his crimes were numerous. Just numerous. He resigned in 2008. He was convicted of 24 counts of racketeering, extortion, bribery, and fraud. His partner and best friend, Bobby Ferguson, went on to prison as well for 21 years. Well, essentially what they were doing, for people who don't know, is Bobby Ferguson was the longtime friend of Kwame Kilpatrick. He ended up being a contractor for the city. And of course, when your friend is the mayor and you're a contractor, you can get, let's say, money from the city. And what would end up happening is usually if you wanted to run a business or open a business or build something in the city, lo and behold, you have to end up using Bobby Ferguson as your contractor, you know, who builds and works on your product. And guess who was getting kickbacks on this product? Yes, it was Kwame Kilpatrick. How all of this stuff ended up coming about, though, is because Kwame Kilpatrick ended up lying about having sex with his chief of staff in a civil trial. And it ended up being proven, of course, that he was having sex with this Christine Beatty. Both she and Kwame Kilpatrick were both married at the time. They had met in high school, apparently, and was dating. And then they had separated, and then they ended up getting back together. And it was this big old gossipy thing. They did several podcasts talking about it. They both apparently are over it now or whatever. They're laughing and chuckling and hucking it up. But, you know, Kwame was a married man. This woman was married. They both had kids. I mean, I fail to see the humor in destroying 2 households and embarrassing all of these people and embarrassing the children. I fail to see the humor in that. That's me personally, though. But Kwame Kilpatrick was no doubt a corrupt individual. Another corrupt bastard was Monica Conyers. If you ever heard the name Conyers in relationship to Michigan, then yes, she was the wife of John Conyers, the councilman from the Michigan representative in Detroit, who was also corrupt, by the way. But we'll talk about that in a second. So Monica Conyers spent 27 months, that's a little over 2 years, in prison for the reason bribery. While on Detroit City Council, she resigned in 2009. She took bribes from a company called Synagro Tech in exchange for a vote on a $47 million sludge hauling contract. In other words, she took kickbacks. Not a surprise there. John Conyers, her actual husband, who resigned in 2017 following claims of sexual harassment and verbal abuse by his employees and misuse of taxpayer funds. Following John Conyers' death, he's dead now, 2 people over the age of 50 claimed that John Conyers was their father and that they were entitled to pieces of his estate. Monica Conyers, of course, argued this, would not even allow a DNA test to be performed. So somebody who, I think the guy is 57, I think one of the chick is like 62 or something like that. And they were denied a DNA test, even though they could prove that their mother was having sexual relationship with John Conyers back before they were born. So this all around sludge running the city of Detroit. That would be 2005 for Monica Conyers. I don't remember quite the date. I didn't write it down when it comes to John Conyers. The most despicable of all of this crap, Mr. Charles Pugh. Charles Pugh was a Fox 2 news anchor who decided to run for city council, and he ended up winning. He became city council president in 2009. 3 men claimed Charles Pugh hit on them when they were teenagers. There were no charges ever filed. Then a 4th man appeared who was 27 years old, who claimed that Charles Pugh molested him when he was 14 years old. This was the charge that led to, this was all occurring while Charles Pugh worked as a Fox 2 news anchor. As the sex scandal was going on, Charles Pugh fled Detroit and was living in New York. He was arraigned on 6 counts of child molestation. In 2015, during the sex grooming trial, a Charles Pugh accuser won $250,000, but there were no criminal charges. Apparently, this is how the story goes, that the victim, in 2003, the victim, a young boy, was visiting the Fox 2 news station to perform with his theater troupe. He had inquired about participating in an internship at this time. When he did so, he exchanged numbers with Charles Pugh. Charles Pugh then invited the teen to his apartment, where then they had inappropriate sexual contact. This boy was a child. Then another young man, who they called KS, who was a student at Frederick Douglass Academy, an all-boys high school in Detroit, accused Charles Pugh of grooming him during a mentorship program. Charles Pugh apparently took this kid on shopping sprees, bought him a cell phone, and sent him dirty text messages. He pressured the youth into sending a video of himself masturbating for $160. The money the kid needed to go to prom. Charles Pugh's defense of all of this, if that didn't make you sick enough, Charles Pugh's defense was that this case is about regret. The victim was never harassed or abused, but he did regrettable things for money. The victim is embarrassed and ashamed of the things he voluntarily did for money. That is the defense in the civil case. Charles Pugh ended up going to prison. Why he didn't end up dead, I have no idea. He's out of prison, by the way. He just got out of prison recently, by the way. So Charles Pugh spent years in prison. He ended up going to prison eventually for child molestation. But he's out now. Yay. Hide your sons. So that brings us to modern day. The FBI raids of Detroit City Council. August 2021, Andre Spivey. Spivey was elected to City Council citywide, 2009, District 4. In 2013 and 2017, he lives in East English Village, nice part of town. Andre Spivey was arrested on bribery charges. He ended up resigning. And he was arraigned in August of 2021, a conspiracy to collect bribes. He accepted over $35,000 in bribes for votes over the years 2016 to 2020. In 2018, Andre Spivey accepted $1,000 from an undercover agent on October the 26th, 2018. He also had delinquent taxes on his home property, upwards of $8,000. Upwards of $8,000. The city forces you to pay to live in your own house. They call it property taxes. He didn't even pay those. And he was taking bribes. He wasn't the only one, though. In March 2021, Gabe Leland, the only white man on this list, was arrested. He was indicted on, guess what? Bribery. Conspiracy to commit bribery, 2018. He took a plea to get his charges dismissed. He accepted $7,500 for his re-election campaign and free car repairs in exchange for votes on a land deal in 2017-2018. The person who was bribing him was named Robert Carmack. Robert Carmack wanted Gabe Leland to stall a land deal. This was misconduct in office. Apparently, Gabe Leland met Robert Carmack at the Caucus Club where he accepted $7,500, which was only half of the $15,000 bribe that they agreed to. Carmack never paid the other half. June 27, 2017, Carmack met Leland at the Sting Club to discuss the land deal, which Carmack secretly recorded. Leland told him to split the money into two checks, each one for $7,500. Of course, like I said, Carmack never paid the other one. Janae Ayers, who I met personally. I met this woman. She was involved in a bribery case. Again, like I said, there hasn't been anything that has come up with her yet. We're just saying. Very, very conspicuous. A towing company led by Gaspar Fiore, who was also not charged, was involved with this case as well. Gaspar Fiore, in 2018, was sentenced to 9 months in prison for bribing suburban officials with help for a towing contract. Janae Ayers was elected to city council in 2016 via a special election and was elected outright in 2017. Detroit Deputy Police Chief Celia Washington accepted $3,000 from Gaspar Fiore in 2018. So even the police are corrupt. To further that point, 2018 Deputy Chief of Police Celia Washington sentenced to 12 months in prison for bribery. $2,500 fine. Conspired with Gaspar Fiore to commit bribery in respect to towing permits. So how that works. The city has to tow if you leave your car in a certain place. But if you can get in good with the police, they would make a phone call to a specific towing company, a contractor, how that works. So when the police needed to tow vehicles, they would call Gaspar Fiore on word of Celia Washington, shoveling a little bit of business his way. Washington accepted multiple bribes, and she admitted to accepting at least $4,000. Scott Benson, who was raided on August the 25th, but not charged with anything. He was the councilman for District 3. He took office in 2014. He was involved with a nonprofit called Save Detroit Jobs, which was connected to Benson. They paid out $14,000 in unspecified reimbursements and $4,000 in campaign wages to Carol Banks, who was the chief of staff for his 2016 campaign. It was unknown whether Banks worked for Benson at the time that they accepted this, let's say, suspicious money. And these may have been different reimbursements. But it does not stop there. Verdine Day, a retired Detroit Firefighters Association treasurer, a union job, charged with 30 years in prison Her crimes from 2015 to 2019. It was found out by the association hiring an outside firm to audit the finances of the union that Verdine Day was writing checks in her name and changed the purpose of these expenses, claiming union donations to charities such as the NAACP, the Detroit Children's Hospital, and the Special Olympics. She ended up stealing $167,000. Well, $168,000. And went traveling around the world on union dimes. She spent $26,000 on cruises alone, and also made $52,000 in unauthorized purchases using union credit cards. And that's just me scratching the surface of how horrible corruption is in Detroit. Several city councilmen, the actual mayor, union, we can go into the union stuff all day. When people ask the question, why are these cities so broke? You need to just understand. It's because the government is completely and total. It's not like some special thing. It's not special. When you look into African societies, and I have talked to actual African people, and I've seen many videos and read many articles about how corrupt African warlord societies are. What ends up happening, this is why, I'm against foreign aid. Now, I know a lot of people, they get tight-assed about this, but foreign aid only helps dictators. You give a dictator some money, it's supposed to be, we're going to feed starving African children. Next thing you know, the dictator just goes out and buys more guns. He goes out and buys himself a nice car. He goes out and he's trying to, live his best life, and all the other people are just starving. And then he's also taking a lot of money from them, because taxes aren't only the thing that white people do in the United States. It's a thing all over the globe, that tax racket. It's a dirty game. Whenever you find people who are depressed and poor, just look at the government. Is the government stealing from them? 9 times out of 10, yes. Is the government making it difficult for them to make money? Probably. Gabe Leland, I literally sat in, and it's very bizarre. I live in Andre Spivey's district. It's a pit. I've met Janae Ayers. I've sat in some of her meetings and listened to her. She's a ditz. Gabe Leland, I literally sat in meetings while he grilled people over building permits, whether they were going to do this or whether they're going to do that. And I don't remember, I'm not going to say I know this specific case that he ended up getting arrested for. I don't know anything about that. But I sat in the room when he was grilling people over this kind of stuff. And now I know he was likely just beating it down the competition for whoever was paying him at the time. And that's really what government does. And usually it's very out in the open. When the government comes out and they start having all these special interest groups, now they start doing all this diversity and equity garbage, right? First it was the unions. The unions are a special interest group. When you start asking people, how are we going to bring the unions in on this? This was a Gabe Leland line. I remember this one clearly. How are we going to bring the pipe fitters union or whatever the hell into this job that you're trying to create? Dude, can't he get the job started and then he can worry about that part? No. Because you only want people who can pay union labor. So that means you're going to put the stick to anybody who can't pay. So that means people who just need that job, not worried about union benefits and weekends off and all that crap. They just need a job. Those people are not going to be able to get a job because the city councilman sat up there and destroyed that opportunity by running off this guy. And they do it all the time. And then they'll tell you it's for your own good. On a national stage, you may have seen this with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and how she handled the Amazon thing in New York, where she made such a big stink about Amazon that Amazon decided we're not going to build in New York, forget it. And then when New York lost the opportunity to be able to have an Amazon headquarters, she was like, well, I didn't have that kind of power. I didn't have that kind of authority. It's like, well, you was using your bully pulpit, even if it's just your Instagram account or whatever, Twitter, to rail against Amazon and talk about how horrible it is and talk about how the jobs don't pay no money and we need to have unions and all this crap. Then the people who were like, I wish Amazon would come because my son, my daughter, my brother-in-law, whatever needs a job, and now they can't find it because you ran off Amazon. Well, guess what? Those people are poor. They were poor before. They're poor now. What did you do? Who did you benefit? You benefited yourself. So it's not always about the actual bribe itself of you taking cash from somebody else. You can steal people's opportunities. And that's what the government does more than anything. They steal your fucking opportunities from you. There's hundreds of thousands of jobs probably in your neighborhood that could have helped your family, your children, or whatever. But the city council, the mayor, or whatever, however form your local government takes, probably sat in some boardroom or in a lunch counter somewhere, Bucharest Grill or some shit, and talked the person who was going to start that company into not doing it. Or they were in the back pocket of somebody else who says, no, I'll do it. I'll kick it back to you. I'll kick a little bit over to you. And they do this stuff all the time. All these land deals where people get big strips of land for like $2 an acre or whatever. But then if somebody else tries to come in and buy it, it'd be like $15 an acre. That kind of petty shit. This is when we say smaller government, we need kind of not so much bureaucracy. This ain't really even the bureaucracy. This is the political class. The bureaucracy is worse than this because the bureaucracy doesn't get a lot of attention. Those are the people who soak up a lot of your tax dollars. The $100,000, $200,000 diversity officers in universities. Now all of a sudden the cost of books and the cost of tuition is going sky high, and people are like, "What's going on? Why is everything cost so much?" It's like maybe because you're paying $100,000 to somebody who sits in an office all day and just to call other people racists. It's not a real fucking job. Like it's so many things that I try to tell people. And they all tie together if you really look at it. The government does not help you. If anything, it's in the way. That's part of its job. They call themselves protecting you, looking after you, or whatever. They'll sit down and they'll talk about we need to build black businesses. That's another hook that they pull. We want to start black businesses, so we're gonna, this is when I double back to the whole diversity garbage, the special interest groups. Now that Black Lives Matter has some type of political clout, they get to make decisions. They don't get to make decisions directly, but they get the ear of the political class, and they say, well, we will run a candidate against you with all our millions of dollars that we got from George Floyd and all that shit. We'll just run a political candidate against you if you don't listen to us. So it behooves you to sit down with the NAACP and the Urban League and all. Any rational person, I know I'm kind of ranting at this point. Any rational person will look at something like the NAACP that's been around for over 100 years. If you have been working on a project for over 100 years and you still have not gotten it, you're ineffective. You need to fuck off. That's what most normal people would think that way. If your project takes over 100 years to be completed and you're not going to the moon or something like that, it's just social, then you're doing something wrong. The NAACP is in pretty much every district in Detroit. It's surrounded by blight and garbage. Every single one. There's no NAACPs that exist in any nice parts of Detroit. Because there's a couple, okay? But you would think that when you hear about this kind of stuff, how terrible the city is, how horrible the city council is, how corrupt it is. Shouldn't those people be out there talking about, hey, we talking about black power and, we got the black mayor stealing money. You got black city councilmen stealing money and they're corrupt and all this shit. Like, shouldn't the NAACP be in the front? Shouldn't Black Lives Matter be out there in front? No, because they helped get these people in power. I'm not talking about them specifically. It could just be offshoot organizations or other people who are not officially Black Lives Matter or officially in the NAACP who are going into the churches and bringing all these people into the church. So, grandma and grandpa, at least they don't know shit about city council. They just see this guy like, hey, I know him. I like him. I'll vote for him. And most people are ignorant. Detroit has a really low turnout for voting, notoriously. Because most of the people, and I've said this before, and this is another big issue with Detroit, you got like 40 some odd percent of the people are functionally illiterate, which means they probably couldn't read the new rule changes that they voting for. They're trusting the people standing outside of the voting booths to tell them what they're voting on. They're trusting the commercials that run on TV all day, every day, berating them about how they should vote against or vote for or something. Mostly people are either choosing not to vote on that crap at all, or they're just trusting it and saying, this is what, I was told, and this is what by people I trust. And that's how it works in the Black community. They will co-opt the churches. The church is the most corrupt institution in Black America, period. I don't care about you being a Christian. The church, the moment the church got mixed up in politics, it became corrupt. Sorry. Your Martin Luther Kings and all that shit too. Once you started talking about we're going to start using the church to preach socialism and all that other garbage, it became a completely, totally fucked up institution. The church and politics are not supposed to mix that way. It's not supposed to. Once you start, this is when you start getting people telling you Jesus would, what would Jesus do in relation to tax money? It's like, no, Jesus would tell you to go into your own pocket and give this guy a ham sandwich if you have it. Jesus wouldn't tell you to give your ham sandwich to the government so that the government can cut off its own slice and then cut off other slices of this same ham sandwich. And then eventually the pieces of the crust gets to the guy that you wanted to give it to. That ain't fucking Jesus's idea of helping the poor. But they'll have you believe in that shit. That's why the church is corrupt. Church is corrupt. Government is corrupt. Not many institutions in the United States aren't really corrupt right now. ACLU, corrupt. Mainstream media, corrupt as fuck. The only chance, the universities are beyond repair. If the universities was a part of the body, let's say if it was a hand, I would say cut it off. I don't give a fuck if it's your right hand or you're right-handed. The universities are absolutely a wasteland. They got to go. The media is almost as bad. The only thing that saves the media is the fact that other people who are independent can come out and talk about this stuff. Now, the media talks about this shit like they didn't help some of these people get in office. They do. So, that's a big problem with Detroit. Detroit city corruption. There it is. And it's not always the policy in and of itself. It's the agenda of the policymakers. The agenda of the policymakers is to make money for themselves. They will find a way to do it. They're incentivized to do it. You're never going to know about this. How you're going about living your life. He's going to go to the club with some guy who you wouldn't know if you spit on him. And he's going to take a bribe and go on about his day. You ain't going to hear nothing about it. Imagine how many people are running around this city right now that don't know that in the last 2 years, 2 city councilmen have gone to prison for bribes, and that there are 2 more that are under investigation, and they have no fucking idea. That's a lot of people in Detroit, and that's why Detroit is in the way the situation it is in. All right, like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later.